Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. This is a podcast dedicated to educating and empowering women from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and I'm a maternity pediatric chiropractor as well as a mother who has hand-selected experts in natural holistic healthcare specialties to shine light on options and choices during this exciting phase of a woman's life. And today I had the honor and privilege to interview my guest, Erica Orosco Cruz, and we spoke on the topic of sleep training tips for new parents that no one is talking about. Erica is an early childhood development expert and parent coach who helps children, families, and teachers thrive and grow together on the foundation of mutual respect. She is certified through Resources for Infant Educarers and the state of California and is also trained in the Waldorf methods. Erica's passion for supporting families stems from her own experience as a mother of 4 boys and as her own personal experience as a daughter who set out to parent in a different way than she was as a child. While raising her children, she searched to find a program that brought children to the forefront while also providing clear boundaries for mutual respect. A program where children would be seen and heard and where adults would see with new eyes and listen for what was unsaid. When she realized what she was looking for didn't exist, she founded Homeschool Garden, a now 2-decade-old early childhood development center in Los Angeles. At Homeschool Garden, Erica has developed a school model that provides an environment where children, families, and teachers can thrive and grow together on the foundation of mutual respect. Erica also serves parents as a coach and postpartum doula, supporting parents on everything from what happens when you get home from the hospital to potty training, mental health, and more. To find out more about her, check out her website at homeschoolgardensite.com, or you can follow her at Homeschool Garden. Hi, Erica. Welcome to this show. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Awesome. Dr. Laura, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm just so happy to see that the work that you're doing in the world is out there and, lots of people are needing it. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's my passion to, I feel like the best way to empower a woman and a mother is through education, right? So when she knows what her choices and her options are, and learns to trust her gut, then she's going to be on the right path for her and her family.
Exactly. It empowers the mother, which then leads to empowering the child as well.
That's right. And the whole family, the mother's leading the way with that. So I'm excited to learn more about what you do. I mean, you just had this huge treasure trove of wealth of information and wisdom regarding everything parenting, starting with babies. And today we're going to focus on sleep training tips with specific for infants. And I saw in your bio, you have 5 kids.
I have 4 kids and 2 grandchildren.
Oh my goodness. So that's a lot. And you have a lot of experience, obviously, too. I cannot even believe you're a grandmother. That is amazing.
Yeah. I had my first son when I was 20, got married when I was 18. And now he's having babies, and he's just amazing to be watching him
be a dad. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then it's such a reflection of the type of childhood that he had.
Yes. It was in his teenage years, I'm going to give, my kids McDonald's and they're going to watch TV as much as they want. And as soon as he found out that he was expecting, he was like, Mom, you need to teach her everything you know. Which I was,
so sweet.
it was shocking. And it was like, oh, he did hear, he did see, and it was just really, it came full circle. And they are really amazing at what they do. And they're practicing, the tools that, I've been teaching for the last, 30 years.
Yeah, right. You were modeling all of that for him as he was growing up. And at the end of the day, he really learned a lot from you and appreciates that. I did see, as a reading over your one sheeter, that your own childhood was different than the way that you raised your own children and are obviously now teaching parents parenting skills. Do you want to talk a little bit about your childhood?
Yes. So my parents both worked full time. My grandmother was my care provider, my dad's mom, and she was amazing, unconditional love, present. I was the youngest grandchild at the time. So the other children were cousins and sister were going to school. And then I would have her the whole day to myself. And we'd, go on adventures to go visit her father and take care of him. We would pick up groceries, move the car for the street sweeper, lots of time together. And it was really precious. And when I turned 3, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And by the time I was 4, I had lost her. And so I had this great foundation and then went into group care when she was diagnosed so she could start her treatment. And it was a different experience. And because my parents worked full time, the whole way up through my high school years, I was in childcare a lot. And it was not the experience that I was having with my grandmother. And so when people say the first 5 years are the most important, I'm proof to the pudding because she really set the foundation of trust in oneself, unconditional love, being present with a child. And my parents were not in that scenario. They were focused on their work. My mother struggled with depression. My dad struggled with alcoholism. And so it was really not a present childhood. And so when I found out that I was pregnant, I knew that I wanted to do things differently, but I didn't know what that was. And I came across the RIE philosophy in college. I was in early childhood, which kind of sounds funny that, I had that kind of experience. And here I am. I really had the idea of I'm going to save the children. So I'll go into early childhood education and came across this philosophy. And I said, this is really great. But you can't do this with kids. You can't talk to kids, that they might not understand you when they don't have verbal skills. You can't slow down so much and be so patient and things like that because I had never seen anything like that in my experience, even working in the field already. So then when I was 20, I had gone on an interview to work at a center, and they were using the RIE philosophy, and I was blown away by what was possible. And I was like, I want to learn that. And then it was shortly after I contacted them that I found out I was pregnant. And then it was just such a great foundation to build on.
Wow, that's cool. So what is the RIE philosophy?
Sure. RIE is actually the acronym for Resources for Infant Educarers. And it was based in California, started in the 70s. Magda Gerber was one of the founders, and she really wanted to create a space where parents could observe their babies and really see with new eyes. And that's one of her key phrases, is to see with new eyes. And so when she started the program, it was for parents. They were actually in an observation room, and the infants were in another room where the parents could see them with a facilitator. And it was really tuning in your observation skills so that you can see your children, not as you know them. Magda talks about, pretend like you could take out your brain of everything that you knew about your child and, put your top of your head back on and really see them. And when we do that, we really see cues of development. We see cues of, their likes, maybe their fears. We get to see them in a whole new way.
Wow. Right. It's just much more objective.
Yes. So we're not putting our judgment into it, but we're really seeing them for where they are and who they are, rather than, oh, my son's a biter, or, my child is always clinging to me. Well, actually, when we get to see them with these, this fresh outlook with no judgment, we actually might see that, oh, they're actually tired, or, they're rubbing their eyes. We might see sleep cues that we might not be seeing when we're just totally attached to them.
Right. And how much of that is involved with the parents' own subconscious programming? So you had mentioned like the first 5 years, it could be even up to the first 7, right, of our own childhood that forms our subconscious brain. And then we're essentially just maybe putting that on our child, right? As opposed to having that more objective perspective.
Yes. And that's, I think, a great lead into our topic for today because, so often we new parents are so tired and we hear a baby cry and we're like, oh, they're hungry. We just go to that because when we wake, we might be hungry. When we're upset, we might be hungry. But so quickly we want to nurse the child, get a bottle, put the child back to sleep as much as possible, as quickly as possible, without really observing of, is it really hunger? Maybe it's not. Maybe they got to chill. Maybe the shift in the, air conditioning or the window, stirred them a bit. Maybe they had some gas. Maybe, it's a variety of different things that it could be. But I know as tired parents, we just want to get that child back to sleep so we can get some sleep.
That's right. And so that is so interesting. What I see a lot with specifically the dyads, the new dyads in my office. So the mother, the baby, like let's say those first 9 months of life, the baby is really a reflection of the mother's state, right? So if the mother is overwhelmed and exhausted and unsupported, the baby will also feel very tired and cranky, so to speak. Or, just irritable, right? All of those types of things, right?
Yeah.
Because the babies need us to help, or they're codependent on our, the nervous system regulation. So, for new parents that are having, let's say, a baby who's not sleeping well, what can you recommend to help them kind of resolve the sleep so everyone is sleeping better, everyone is feeling well rested?
Yes, definitely that regulation plays a big key. And I'm sure, the symptoms might be irritated or, whatever it is, but it usually goes back to sleep deprivation. And so making sure, even if you can prior, is that you have support. So, even if that's, mom or auntie or neighbor or somebody present, at some point during the day so that you can feel a little bit of reprieve so that you're not 24-hour around the clock, the caregiver. And like I said, it could be just an hour break because sometimes that's all we need to get grounded. It could be 45 minutes. It could be 30 minutes if you need to, but just some kind of reprieve so that you can take care of yourself, because I think that's one of the biggest struggles is to take care of ourselves. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I think that we don't really I don't think we get to this topic, is really enduring the space of where they're going to be sleeping. So whether that's, a co-sleeper, whether that's a crib, whether that's in your bed, wherever that is, so that they get to know that that space is, not just for sleep, but it could be a happy place as well for other things. So it could be, you run to the bathroom and you put them in the crib, or, you lay them on your bed if you're co-sleeping, or you have them in the co-sleeper while you're folding laundry, so that they get to be more familiar with that space and not just a space that maybe you put them in when they're asleep and then they wake up and they're like, oh no, where am I? I was in mama's arms and now I'm in this, place that's not familiar to me. And so we want to definitely have that connection to their sleep space other than when it's you being present there with them. And I think that's really important. So, there's so many opportunities during the day. We could be pumping, we could be, folding laundry, we could be eating, a fresh salad or something as they're in their sleep spaces so that they get more familiar with that.
So So it's having them awake in their sleep spaces with the mother or parent nearby.
That's right. And so that they can, when, let's say you put them in sleeping, they fell asleep on you and you want to put them down. When they wake up, they get to be more familiar with the space. Oh, I remember, mama was folding laundry, mom was close by. Well, I woke up in this space. So they get more familiar with that space as well.
It feels safe.
Mm-hmm. And it's familiar, and they start to get used to it. And then it's like, oh, it's not so bad. I can wake up and I can go back to sleep in this space.
So I know you gave a few different examples of sleep locations. Is there ones that are like preferred, or is it really just based off of the family needs?
I highly recommend. I co-slept with my two oldest, and it worked for us, but I was also going to sleep and waking up on their hours. So I wasn't necessarily wanting to stay up later or, needing to wake up earlier. So that worked for us at that time. For me, I still think that a crib is the best place for the baby, only because that contact is not needed, that the parent can stir in their bed themselves, change a pillow, move around, reposition, and not be fearful of waking up the baby. Also, when I'm working with postpartum clients, a lot of time is that they will sense the baby's awake if they're close by, and then they'll be like fully awake, and then perhaps even having a release of breast milk because they sense the baby's awake, where baby may not be hungry, but they're just stirring a little bit. So ideally, it would be in a crib. If you're wanting to do something different, a co-sleeper or having them in bed with you, it's definitely preference. And I'm going to support, what's best for you as a mom, and what you're wanting to do with your child. And I'm going to let you know what's the best opportunity for you to sleep as well.
So you mentioned the first two in your bed. What about the second two?
So the second two, my third child was born 8 years later. And I was like, well, maybe I just enjoyed my bed. Maybe I didn't, maybe it wasn't going to work for us. So we actually tried co-sleeping, and neither of us got sleep. And then also I saw that he was just not an easy person to put to sleep. He was, I could be holding him and he'd be, scratching behind his ears. I could put him in his crib. He would be, just uncomfortable. And it wasn't until, 4 years later, I found out that he had a gluten intolerance. And I was like a 4-person toast, eating every morning, and I breastfed him. So I believe that had something to do with the sleep, the inflammation came out as he was, going to sleep and stuff. But so he slept in a crib, and it was wonderful for both of us. It was better than us being together. And then my fourth son, who is 2 years old, he actually started with a crib, I want to say 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks after birth. And he was an amazing sleeper. And it was just, that was his comfort spot. And that's what continues to be his comfort spot. We've converted the crib into a toddler bed now. And it's just sometimes he'll be downstairs and he'll go mimis, which is, sleep for him in Spanish. So, and sleep has always been a big thing in our family, in the sense of we talk about it, oh, it seems like you might be tired. You might want to go lay down if there was some irritability that, was happening, so that I could even have, 5 and 6 year olds say, I'm tired, I'm going to go lay down, take a nap. And so they're really listening to their cues.
Right. That's amazing that they can actually articulate that. And, what's that? I mean, most people are like, okay, once my child outgrows naps, around, I guess, 3 years old or so, then they kind of feel like that's the end. But even as adults, it's nice taking a nap on occasion, right? So
yeah.
What does that look like? The child's just like, okay, I need to lay down. It's like, maybe a half hour. You don't want them to sleep too long. What do you do?
Well, I really want to look at the whole picture. Were we at Grandma and Grandpa's later than usual the night before? So yeah, he might, 5 or 6 old might need to sleep because they're catching up on some sleep. I do want to, of course, I don't want it too late to bedtime. So I'm, watching, is it about time for them to be waking up? Is it time for them to be restful? We just have a routine that after lunch, it's quiet time. It's not like a bursting, bouncing off the couches kind of thing. You can go look at a book. You can sit on your bed. You can have something small, like a small toy or something, on their bed when they're older. And often, when their body is just ready for it, they will just lay down and go to sleep. So even at the school that we have, we still have 5-year-olds that are not crashing out hard on their own without, any encouragement of, okay, it's time. They're on their bed, they have a book, and they just find sleep because their body's really needing that. And I think just our social culture is just so quick and so at a fast pace for them. And here we're in Los Angeles right now. We have the heat that's also a contributing factor of like, they're wiped out, they need a break. And it doesn't have to be very long for them to get that reprieve for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that quiet time makes a lot of sense too, because, they're so busy playing. It's like really all encompassing, right? And
Yes.
And then for if they're outside, like you said, for a few hours and it's hot, it's like tiring, and then they just want to chill out in the AC and take it easy. And like today, my son's like, I don't want to play outside right now. I just, he was out all morning for his tennis camp, and he's just like, I just want to be inside and, quiet. It's like he's playing, but it's not that hyper crazy running around. He had enough of that this morning. So it's like a nice break for him.
It is. And then definitely with the older children, you'll see too, you'll see different cues of tiredness, but they're not being super social. They're kind of want to play on their own, even though it's, a group of children. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe they woke up earlier today than usual, or maybe they had a restless sleep. Maybe they had a bad dream or something. So it's just really cueing into that and going, okay. And we're sharing those observations. So I talked about, my older children when they were younger of just like, it looks like you're tired, or I remember you stayed up, with grandpa late last night, or whatever it was. So we're giving these cues even to young infants. So, oh, I see, you're rubbing your eyes. I might take you over to your crib now. I'm looking at the clock. You've been up for a few hours. So this is brand new babies. We're talking with them.
Brand new babies.
Brand new babies.
Fresh out of the oven. Got it. So you're actually communicating that to them, and they're hearing that.
Yeah. And at first it might be like Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 wah. But as we continue to be repetitive with our language of like, oh, you're rubbing your eyes again. And you say that so many times and they're like, oh, is that what she means? Like, I'm doing this. So, we're talking even to the young infants and letting them know the cues that we're observing.
Right. Oh my God, that's amazing. So you're doing that for sleep. You're doing that for feeding. Essentially you're teaching them everything, the language that goes with what they're noticing, right? With their body and their,
Yeah. So,
emotions.
Exactly. So with a young infant that's sleeping, let's say they stir in the middle of the night. I really highly recommend for families, if it's possible, to have a dimmer light in the room where you are with the baby, because you don't have to flash on a big light and have more of them waking. So like I said, sometimes it could be like a chill in the room and it woke them enough. So I will turn on the light dimly and take a peek. And sometimes even young infants can go right back to sleep. So, turn on the light. I'm going to check on you. I heard you right now. Oh, I see you're stretching. Okay. I'm going to close the light again and see if you're able to go back to sleep. And I close the light. And sometimes they're able to put themselves right back to sleep.
And you're saying these words out loud.
I'm saying these words out loud. So that my intervention is what I would call it. I'm intervening, is first vocal of like, I hear you. I'm going to come check on you. So that my first response isn't the light going on full blast and me scooping them up right away. Let me first see what I can do without, having to do a full intervention and have them stir awake.
Okay. So assuming they're not hungry, they don't need a fresh diaper, then essentially it's also kind of essentially helping them learn how to self-soothe, put themselves back to sleep. And if you do pick them up and they don't need a new diaper or they don't need to be fed, it might wake them up more, right? And then you have to kind of repeat the process of putting them back to bed.
Yes, because everything that we do is stimulating. I mean, we have to remember they were in utero in this blissful space where when they were hungry, they were fed, the temperature was perfect, the lighting was perfect. So everything that we do is a stimulation to them. They have all these fresh senses. They haven't been going to concerts like us or wearing earphones, so their sense of hearing is pristine. So much that they might not even like the way you sing, but you do it anyway sometimes. But yes, so everything is a stimulation to them and to their senses.
Got it. So less is more. And then assuming, and I like that this is not a like, hey, just cry it out. Because my concern with that is you're teaching a child that they're, when they speak up for themselves, they're not being heard, right?
That's right.
Which is not a good lesson to teach a young child, because that will stay with them for the rest of their life, unless they really, evolve out of that. So instead of like, oh, just leave them in the room, let them cry, we just do these little baby steps to see if they can fall back asleep. And if not, then the next step would be to do what?
The next step would be, intervention of like, okay, check the diaper's fine, looking at the clock, they might have just eaten like an hour ago. Okay, so maybe it's a burp. So maybe now we go into burping. And so I'm not trying to do everything within a minute's time, which some of us, if we're, oh my God, the baby's awake, we're having all this energy and anxiety.
Right. So it's very patient and calm. And that's probably a little bit of a learned behavior for a parent who, especially a first-time parent who is feeling anxious, right? And they're bringing that energy into the room even. And then the baby's like, oh, why is she anxious? Do I need to be worried about something? Is there something that we need to run away? Is there a tiger chasing us? Right. So when we learn to regulate our own nervous system, that will instantly can be helping the baby feel calmer and safer.
That's right. Exactly. And like you said, it is a learned behavior and we get to practice it every day with our children.
And do you notice, because this could also apply to dads too, right? So, is there a difference when you're teaching a mom versus a dad about these smaller interventions? What have you noticed over your years of teaching?
I don't notice a big difference. As long as, again, they're willing to observe and be curious. I think the hardest thing for them is they do want to put out that fire. Let me be the hero. Let me figure this out. And instead of trying to figure it out, it's actually more observation than anything else.
So through observation, you will figure it out, but it's less, like you said, like a emergency situation here.
Yes. Like if we could give dads the role, or mom, of being the detective or the scientist rather than the fireman.
Got it. That's a really good analogy. So that's amazing. So essentially, do you coach new parents also kind of about like normal wake, sleep cycles, things like that? What's like the range for babies?
Yeah, definitely. What I find, I've been doing the postpartum doula work for the last 14 years. And what I've seen is, I'll give you an example. There was a family that I was working with, and we had created these, sleep habits. And then dad had a week off of work. And so they were like, take the week off. I'm going to be here. I can support this. And so I was gone for a week. And when I came back, it was like starting from square one. The child was, waking. They were feeding at every waking rather than, checking and seeing what the child really needed. And so then it was like, okay, I know that we did this before. We can do it again. But I think we have to remember that children are so habitual. So, the consistency, if it's there, then they get to create, these habits, and the consistency of other things, the waking, and feeding at each waking, then that is something different that we could also create. So whatever you're consistent with is what's going to get developed, because they are so habitual, because they, are used to, oh, I cry and I'm getting this bottle. Okay, then when I cry, I'm going to, get a bottle each time. So I'm going to cry until I receive that bottle, rather than, I just ate 2 hours ago. It might be a burp, it might need a diaper change or things like that. And so the cycles are, really pretty consistent. It really depends on just the intervention that they're receiving at that time.
Right. And you're right. It's like Pavlov's response, right? So, babies, because they don't have words yet, they will cry for different needs. And have you noticed that some parents can even tell that some cries are like one's for hunger, one's for fresh diaper, one's for
tiredness. Yeah.
I'm tired, or I need to be held.
Yeah. There's definitely a distinct cry that parents start to learn. If it's more repetitive, it sounds similar, like just cycles of the same kind of cry. Not high peaking, but, consistent. It's more of almost them like trying to self-soothe. It's more tired. It's more not immediate, rather than the high pitch, get me out of here now kind of, and that could be, I've waited too late to put you to sleep. I've waited too long to feed you. And they don't have a lot of coping skills. So they might get there really quickly if you're not being responsive to them.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So what else do you teach parents that are working on training their child sleep?
Well, I want us to remember that, if children are always on us, whether in our arms or in auntie's arms or daddy's arms or in a carrier, then it's really hard for them to get used to falling asleep in a different space, not with a warm body. And so when they wake and they, their last memory was being in a warm, cuddle, then it's really hard for them to find sleep again from that. And so the idea of, again, like how we talked about earlier, of being in a space where they are not attached to you, they could be in a sidecar, while you're enjoying your meal, you can have a playpen, if you have upstairs, downstairs, you can have a playpen downstairs. We actually have one for my granddaughter, right by the dining room table, so that she could, join us and also be in a space where she's comfortable and content and not attached to somebody, so that when it is time for her to go to sleep, that she doesn't need to be attached to anybody, either a warm body or a familiar, mom and dad's bed or anything like that, but she can actually find sleep on her own.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had some parents say like, oh, my child won't sleep unless they're being held. So from what I'm hearing from you, that's you've taught the child of this is how to fall asleep, which is why they don't know how to fall asleep another way. So what if that child already has been taught that? How do you essentially create a new habit?
That's when we do that in their waking hours. So, your child just woke up, they have a fresh diaper, they just had breakfast, whether that be, a meal if they're a little bit older, or a bottle or breast milk, and now they're like primed and ready to go. This is the time where they have uninterrupted playtime. So it could be, in a play space, it could be in a playpen, but this is the time that you would then have them away from your body so that they can start getting comfortable with that. It's not the time when they're already tired, or, you got to cook lunch, and they're clingy. That is not the time to go, okay, this is your time to play, when they are not at the best momentum. So, so when we are wanting to have them disassociate from being on a warm body to go to sleep, this is the time, when they are pumped and ready to go, that you have them playing in a different space.
Okay. And then when it is time for bed, you start introducing the sleep space, or can they play in their sleep space, or is that going to be confusing?
So they can play in their sleep space. I am not one that, especially for me, because I've noticed that when children are comfortable in their sleep space, that means when they wake, they're not like, get me out of here. You know what I mean when I say that, a baby crying in that sense. When I see that they're comfortable in the space, then totally. And especially if I'm endearing the space, for the first time, maybe they've always slept in mom and dad's bed, and now you're wanting them to sleep in the crib. And we had talked about before we started recording, I have a lot of parents that are expecting, and so they want to transition their child out of their bed because that's what had gotten into the habit of. And so it's like, one, I want to endear the space. Two, I want them to have them having playtime, not attached or close by, or even if it's an older child, like a 4-year-old, playing on their own, where it's not, come look at this, or look, I did this, but actually playing deeply, involved in their play, and not needing, whether it's, to look up and see a familiar person, but really play without being interrupted. And then, it's also being consistent. So I think for me, it's a threefold thing of getting really familiar with their sleep space, being able to play away from your body, and then being really consistent with it. And so you can introduce the crib, you can introduce the bed, as a new place for them to play in. And then as they get regulated and sleeping in their bed or crib, that's where the play would happen away from that sleep space.
I see. So it's like they feel safe there, and then they don't have to sleep on you at that point.
Yes. And for me, even a young infant, like from, my child who was sleeping with us for the first 2 weeks of life, and then it was a transition over to crib, I'm dialoguing with that child as if they are 4 years old. You used to sleep with mommy and daddy, and now we're going to be putting you in your crib. We're going to make sure it's nice and cozy for you, just like it was in mommy and daddy's bed. And letting them know it's going to happen before it happens. It's not like one night, ta-da, this is your big kid bed because you're a big kid now.
Right. And I guess that's really, I think it's so interesting as you're saying this, because when kids do have vocabulary, we would, like, for example, a toddler bed, we have books and we read the books to our child, and we're giving them a heads up, and it's verbally communicated. So it's not a surprise, but that's not always translated to babies, because babies don't have vocabulary. Right. So it's almost like we're just assuming that they're these like blobs that don't have any idea what we're saying, and don't need to be given a heads up, right, of what's happening. Even when I'm adjusting a baby, I tell them, like, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. And, I didn't do that when I first started practicing. And I find that babies appreciate knowing what's going on around them, especially when it's impacting their body. So, the same could be said for anything where a baby's involved, right? You just say,
That's
hey,
right.
this is what we're doing. And, honestly, even in utero, I talk to my son a lot, and, like during the birth process, I'm like, okay, it's time to come out. this is the situation. So yeah, I think we don't give enough credit to babies.
I think Magda Gerber, the co-founder, we used to say we talk like that to our pets before we even talk like that to our children. Oh, are you hungry now? Are you hungry now? Okay, let me get you some food. Who I find that it comes so easily that I've seen with any other field is paramedics. When I see paramedics get to the scene, they are talking to a child as if they were talking to an adult. Okay, we're here to check you out. I'm going to use this light to look in your eyes right now. I mean, and it doesn't really matter how old the child is. I've seen them do it with a variety of ages.
So, and that makes so much sense to me because a paramedic is an emergency situation. And, I go back to the nervous system and that parasympathetic versus sympathetic. And our jobs as adults and the people responsible is to help that person get out of this oversympathetic state of fight or flight and help kind of ground them down into more of a toned nervous system with a balance of their parasympathetics, right? And as parents, we really have that responsibility on a daily basis, right? To help our children not be in that sympathetic state. So speaking calmly, confidently, like, hey, I got this. We're safe. You're okay. That's huge. I mean, that speaks volumes. The
Yes,
tone, it's not
definitely.
even just the words you're saying, right? Your tone, your facial expressions. So
Yes,
one
if you
thing
could
that
imagine. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing that I find, like if you find that it's difficult for your child to feel calm, then once again, I mentioned this earlier, let's look at how we're regulating our own nervous systems as the mother and or parents. And chiropractic is so powerful to help first the mother put the oxygen mask on, right? And mama self-care, help tone her nervous system with chiropractic adjustments. And the baby will instantly benefit from that, even if the baby does not actually get an adjustment as well. But ideally, they both do.
Yeah. Chiropractic care saved me in pregnancy. Again, I have these, 20-year-olds, and then I was, having my son 2 years ago. So my body was just maybe whatever, but my pain was at like a 9. And when I sought out chiropractic care, and it brought it down to like a 4. And so even my baby in utero was like, okay, her pain is not, at this high level. But, we already have chiropractic appointments. My son, who's 2, had surgery last week, and they're doing a muscle biopsy on him. But we already have appointments for both of us to go together because, it was a traumatic experience. As great as the doctors are, it's still a child going into a hospital, surgery, and, all of my stress hormones were, going off as well. It's such a benefit to have that kind of care.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that really is. And that's a powerful story because people, in general think that chiropractic is just for like neck and back pain. And, we really cannot underestimate how powerful it is for anybody with a nervous system, whether it's a baby or an adult, pregnant woman, that our nervous system, the tone of our nervous system will literally create our life, right? That will literally create the type of life we have for ourselves. And whether it's a stressful situation, like you just mentioned, of what you experienced last week, or as we were talking prior to recording about the pandemic and how that's impacted every single one of us through higher elevated levels of emotional stress, that will impact our nervous system tone. And we require more self-care when we're under increased levels of stress. That's just how it works. So sometimes when we're under higher levels of stress, we find it harder to make time for that, right? But that's when we need it even more. And to me, this is a non-negotiable thing that I schedule into for my own life and my family's life, because we're going to be happier, healthier, grounded, and have improved function when we have that self-care on our calendar.
Definitely. And I think it's really important that you mention that and say that, because I think our tolerance level as mothers, of like, our coping skills of like just getting through the day and not prioritizing that kind of care really affects us. And unfortunately, our tolerance levels are so high that we can't even check in sometimes with ourselves in that way. And so when we have that care on the calendar, then we're more in tune, and it's not tolerance levels. It's like, oh yeah, this is what's good for my body.
Yeah, it gets us out of that survival mode. And I unfortunately do see a lot of women and new moms that are really in this survival state, And it's just exhausting. It's burning out. You're going to have short tempers. You're going to just feel miserable. It's just not good quality of life, right? This is not how we're meant to thrive. And if we catch ourselves like feeling like, oh, I'm always irritable, I'm so tired, that is our nervous system screaming, you need a break, you need a massage, you need an adjustment, you need, like you mentioned, even like you need your child to have some care with somebody else for a couple hours so you can just do nothing. That could be your self-care. The self-care does not even have to be an appointment. It's okay, grandma's coming over for a couple hours so you can take a nap, or a nap in a shower, or whatever that self-care looks like for you, a bubble bath, some Epsom salts. So, just recognizing that, when we are in tune with our body, as well as, like you said, in tune with our baby's needs, we're really going to have a better awareness of what we need and what we don't need. And we're going to just make better decisions based off of that information.
Yes, exactly.
So, Erica, do you have any last thoughts you want to share with the audience?
I just what we were just talking about, I think if there's anything that we could gift ourselves is a little grace as parents. Our job is not easy. And I don't think that's said enough times. Our job is not easy. And so giving ourselves a little grace actually helps us give grace with our kids as well.
Wow. Yeah, that is so beautiful. It's just really being patient with ourselves. We were talking about the patience earlier with our babies and, treating ourselves like we would treat our child, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I had a lot of fun chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I hope you love this episode with Erica. She's a wealth of information and knowledge. And what I find with anybody who's had the experience to parent 4 children, you learn a lot over all that years of experience. And now her service as a postpartum doula has allowed her to be in the home of so many young families and supporting them. And I certainly learned some new tricks as well regarding sleep training with my toddler. So I hope you found it beneficial. And if you want to find out more about pregnancy and preconception and preparing for healthy pregnancy and birth, check out my website at drlaurabrayton.com, and you can see some of the programs I have to offer there, including my documentary on my own pregnancy and birth. All right, have a great day.